All right, turn it over to you, Spencer.
The Portland metro area, including Beaverton, rests on traditional village sites of the Kalapuya, Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Cathlamet, Clackamas, bands of Chinook, Tualatin, Molalla, and many other tribes who made their homes along the Columbia rivers and its tributaries. We recognize the systemic policies of genocide, relocation, and assimilation that still impact many indigenous Native American families today. We thank these tribes for being stewards and protectors of these lands for thousands of years. Thanks.
Just to share a little bit, so that was a land acknowledgement that Spencer had brought forward. And so I forgot, Spencer, where that land acknowledgement came from.
It came from a man I know who works for Confluence, which is an educational project, a collaboration between a number of the tribes on the middle and upper Columbia. They provide educational services to schools and opportunities to hear stories and sharings from tribal leaders.
Thank you, Spencer, for providing that grounding for us as we begin our meeting. Joy may be delayed in joining us today, and so we'll move on to the approval of minutes. Are there any comments or yes?
Paolo? Oh, it looks like Dori's hand is up, and I realized you can't see when I point, so I don't know why I did that.
Yes. Dori.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to comment on the land acknowledgement first, to appreciate the effort in making it, Spencer, and then to say that land acknowledgements and context are usually set up prior to a land acknowledgement to explain why they occur. So Spencer, would you do us the favor of explaining why land acknowledgements occur and why people do it in public spaces? I think that would be helpful.
It's becoming increasingly prevalent within nonprofit and governmental agency meetings as a way to, well, frankly, acknowledge the histories of the lands upon which we have built these cities in which we live. And in making the acknowledgement, we hope to reinforce the understanding that we all have as privileged citizens of America, understand and appreciate the extent to which the original occupants of these lands nurtured and cared for them, and begin to appreciate and come to grips with the extent to which our forefathers stole it and caused significant damage to those cultures and the people who have carried their traditions forward till today.
Thank you, Spencer. I think with that, there's also this commitment that's unspoken, of a commitment to learn and acknowledge the history of Indigenous people on these lands. So I appreciate the land acknowledgement. I hope that next time we'll also be able to bring forth perhaps a little bit of learning when we have the opportunity when we meet next. Thank you.
Thank you, Dori.
Dori, I hope if you have additional information that you can share that with Spencer and perhaps the rest of the team so that it can be a an evolving statement that fully recognizes and grounds us in the beginning of our meeting. Yes, Councilor Hasan.
Just to add in celebration of teaching, I remember once being in a room and someone was like, I'm a Native Oregonian. And someone looked over to me and said, unless they are Native American, they're not really a Native Oregonian. So it was an interesting lesson for me to think of it that way. So just as you think of the words that you use, thinking about what it means to be Native and what it means here. And so just a little learning for you.
Thank you. I deeply appreciate the perspectives. I feel like we have such a rich group of knowledge that we have within the circle, and I'm grateful for all of your contributions. Have we all had a chance to look through the minutes of our last meeting? Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of nodding, so that's a good sign. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? You just like them, but you don't want to approve them?
Motion to approve minutes.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa. Spencer, Lisa made a motion. Okay, and can we all agree to that? Aye. Or did I need a second there somehow, Paolo? You're on mute.
Yeah, I think I saw Kathy and Spencer both raise their hands.
Awesome.
Just a second.
Thank you.
And I need to stop pointing on Zoom. One pointing is rude anyways.
It's just harder to know what you're pointing at.
Yes.
That's where that breaks down. Okay, thank you so much. And thank you, Spencer, for putting those minutes together. As we move on, Paolo, can I hand it back to you so you can tell us about public participation?
Sure. So we have no one here today for public participation. Makes sense. It's really nice out. People probably want to go hang out. I then will move us to the next piece. We have Max Wedding here with us. Hi, Max. I know you can't see where I'm waving, but I'm waving to you. Max is here from PSU. Go Vikings. I just want to say a little bit that, yeah, so this is about the Title VI draft that Max has put together. And thank you so much, Max. I want to say that we are a small city with limited capacity, but for a long time have wanted to develop more and or develop the Title VI policy more. And so I was really stoked to actually find out that Max was doing this. And so there's a personal thank you, Max. And also just, I'm sure I speak for a lot of people at the city, say thank you for taking this on. And I'll hand it back over to you.
Sure. Yeah, thank you all for having me. I really appreciate it. I know that you've got a really full agenda, so I'll be as brief as I possibly can. Yeah, my name is Max Wedding. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm from Portland State University, but I've been working with the city of Beaverton for the last couple of months on a Title VI plan. So for some background, Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits discrimination based on race, color, and national origin. And there are lots of federal requirements around Title VI that have evolved since then. But those are the three main groups that are protected under Title VI. And so there's lots of different pieces of Title VI, both in terms of federal requirements as well as state and local requirements. Obviously, the Beaverton non-discrimination policy covers a lot more than those three groups. So this plan really tries to integrate what Beaverton is already doing in terms of casting a wide net of non-discrimination, ensuring that its programs and programming and projects are all properly vetted across the community, don't cause disparate impacts, all of those types of things. This document really tries to codify a lot of the good work that is being done already at the city, but also does lay out some policy suggestions for the city that in order to get federal compliance. Paolo, were you able to send the draft out ahead of time? You're muted, sorry.
I've only been doing this for a year and a half, sorry.
Yeah.
Not too far ahead of time. I sent it earlier this morning.
Okay, totally fine. I just wanted to make sure that you all have it. And so let me give a little background to the plan itself and what we're looking for in terms of feedback, if you have the time and capacity. So what you see is the very first draft of the plan. So it's still, it still hasn't gone through its polishing stages. So there's likely some language in there that needs to be firmed up. There's pieces that are missing still, that are still in development, but we wanted to get out as much as we could to get as much feedback as we can. Oh, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. If you could scroll down to the table of contents. So a lot of the pieces in this plan are required by various federal laws and mandates and executive orders and things. I'll say that some of the language in the requirements don't necessarily line up with more modern language. So for instance, environmental justice comes out of a 1994 executive order that uses terms like minority and things like that aren't necessarily proper terms to use. And so some of the language may seem a little bit dated. It's just to respond to those federal requirements. Same thing with limited English proficiency. There is a policy in place that Beaverton has for English language learners. So it tries to balance some of the dated language that's in the federal requirements with the modern language that Beaverton uses. I just wanted to touch on that real fast. So there's 3 appendices at the end: the Title I complaint procedure, the Title I complaint form, and the standard Title III assurances. Appendices B and C haven't been finalized yet, so they're not included in this draft. But Appendix A has been worked through already. In terms of feedback that I'd love to get, and it doesn't have to happen right now, obviously there's not enough time, but I would love for any feedback on language, again, notwithstanding the federal requirements, but would love for any feedback you could give on whether you see this in conflict with any city policies or priorities or things that I may not be aware of. There are obviously federal requirements we have to meet, but I still want to know where those conflicts exist so we can either call them out and rectify them or see if we can work around them in a next draft. And then, yeah, if there's any pieces that you would like to see in a document like this that you haven't seen yet, would love to hear any suggestions around that. Again, it's required. All of these sections are required in some way, but that doesn't mean we can't add more to it. So any feedback around that would be great. Are there any questions that you all have at this point about the Title VI work or this draft or how this has come about? Yeah, Lisa.
I think Spencer, yeah, had a question.
Okay.
Oh,
Let's
who's
see.
that?
I saw Kathy, Dori, Spencer, then Lisa. Let's go in that round.
Okay.
I'll try to keep track. So Kathy, go on ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. This is a document that I'm pleased to see, Max. Thank you for working on it. Several months ago, an audit was done of the hiring in the city.
Okay.
And there was a great discrimination between the number of so-called minority applicants and so-called minority folks hired.
Okay.
And so does this address that?
Right now, it doesn't speak to that audit specifically. I haven't seen those documents from that audit. So I will ask Patricia for those so that I can review them and see how whatever recommendations or any of that needs to be integrated.
Thank you.
Thanks for telling me about that.
Yeah.
Dori? Dori?
Oh,
I
sorry.
think Dori's next, yeah.
Sorry about that. I couldn't hear you, Paolo. Apologies. Max, again, thank you for your work. A couple of very quick questions. On the acknowledgements page 20, you pointed out which groups you'll be working with.
Yeah.
The Human Rights Advisory Commission is one of them. Consulting on the development of the plan, the City of Beaverton Diversity Advisory Board, City of Beaverton staff members. I would just, ask this group, is there anyone or a voice that's not being heard through these groups that Max might want to consult with? That would be my first question for this group to give Max some feedback on. And then my second question, just looking at the section below that, Max, on who you consulted with, and what, the references and resources that you use.
Yep.
Are there any other out-of-state resources that you think you may benefit from taking a look at, or also anybody in this group? Because Max, you happen to also have several attorneys in this group as well.
Oh, great.
So I would turn my attention to those folks for their feedback and input.
Yes, and those are both excellent questions. Would love to hear any other groups that that I should be talking with over the next month, and any other documents that I should be looking at for sure. And if those don't come to mind right now, Paolo, if you could make sure that you get them my contact information, I would love to hear any of those kinds of recommendations. If they don't pop into mind right now, if as you're reading it, you think of those things, would still love to hear you after.
Okay. Would it be cool, Max, if you throw your email or whatever contact you want folks to use in the chat?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. And then Spencer, we could put it in the notes too. Thank you so much. And speaking of Spencer, I have you next.
Thanks. And thanks, Max. This is really interesting. I have a question born completely out of ignorance. It's been 54 years. Why now? And have there been reviews since then to update and do what this project is about to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is largely born out of a 2015 audit from the Oregon Department of Transportation. The transportation area of the federal and state governments are usually the ones who are sort of overseeing the Title VI work. So anyone who receives federal funding from local governments, state governments, contractors, all of those folks have to comply with Title VI. And a lot of those monies that that City of Beaverton receives end up being transportation dollars. So ODOT is usually at the state level, the ones who look at this. So in 2015, they did an audit of the City of Beaverton around Title VI and gave lots of recommendations. In the next couple of years, they developed a bunch of stopgap and procedures and policies and things that have been integrated into this plan, but they never created a more holistic plan. And so because of the DEI work and the climate action plan work and the especially the Title II work that came out of a separate audit, around that same time. Title II covering ADA and accessibility concerns. The creation of this plan kept getting pushed back. So this year they found the time and resources to be able to contract with the Portland State and Center for Public Service to make a much more holistic plan that takes into account everything.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, this might be in some of the documents, but like, how are you, do you work for the city? I heard you were from PSU, like, and who else is the author? Because I didn't see the authors listed for the document. Like, who is putting this together as a group? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't work for the city. I work through the Center for Public Service of Portland State. I'm in the Masters of Public Administration program, so focusing on local government, which is how I got connected to this work. So the team at Beaverton is myself, or well, at Beaverton is Patricia Anderson-Wick, the HR director, Alexis Ball in the Community Services and Engagement Department, and then Grace Wong, who's the assistant city attorney.
Thank you, Max. Were there any other questions for Max? Max, I know a lot of us haven't had a chance to read the document yet, and so I'm expecting there to be some additional follow-up once we've had a chance for further review. We really appreciate you being here and being willing to share this with us as well as get some feedback. It's an important piece that we need to spend some time looking over. Paolo, I think you were going to add something. Uh-oh, I think Paolo's frozen.
Oh no.
Okay. I'm going to hope Paolo comes back to us really soon.
Yeah.
as he's our guiding force.
Oh yeah, Max. If you
There we are.
Oh, maybe.
Maybe he's coming back. We're waiting. He looks very sleepy at the moment.
I know. That's okay. I've got to get to a
Okay.
class actually. So I'm going to pop off, but yes.
Thank you so much, Max, for your time.
Yes. Yeah, of course. So yeah,
appreciate it.
anytime you all are able to read that and give me feedback over the next couple of weeks, totally fine. I would love if I could get feedback by June 10th, but June 18th at the very latest would be great. So,
Thank you for the deadline. Would it be possible for you to put that in the chat too, the deadline?
Of course.
The cutoff deadline. I think that will be helpful because as we're saying, we've only recently received the document and we want to make sure to give it a thorough look over.
No problem.
Thanks
I'll put
again.
that in there and then head out.
All right. Have a great class. Thank you again. Okay. Paolo, you're home. That's good. You're back.
I was frantically texting you three to see if I was even in there. Okay, looks like we're good to go.
Hooray, you're back. Just in time too. Max left for a class and we are on to liaison updates.
Cool. All right.
Councilor Hasan is up.
Awesome. So as you all probably saw, the city did identify a city manager for the city. We're very excited. It's Jen Haruyama. I have to practice saying the last name. She comes to us from the city of Tracy in California. She just possessed really excellent skills, experience, expertise. The things that I was super excited about were some of the community engagement and communications work that I think we have some opportunity in our city, and some of the work that y'all have been doing as well. She's spearheaded some of that in Tracy. So if you want to look her up and learn about her, I'm really excited about her. Last week, we went through the final pieces of our budget. So May is budget season for cities and counties across the state. So we get 3 nights of up to 5 hours of meetings where we review budget information. So I had 3 binders of just information on all our departments and reviewed budget. I shared this publicly last week. I'll share it again. I was super thankful for being a part of the process and thankful for everyone who participated. But I did share a little bit of disappointment. It felt like a status quo budget. It didn't feel like a budget that was really pivoting to the needs of our community and what we're hearing from our people. But we are in this time of transition where we don't have really permanent city manager. And we also, because, I mean, not that this would have changed, but we don't have a 7th person in city council. So we're in kind of this weird place right now where, because we don't have a couple people, we're not able to do a ton of change or stuff. So we passed the budget, which was really, again, a status quo budget from the past. I think, you know, up next, I got to lead some of the hiring process for the city manager. And so I think up next, we're looking at what does onboarding her look like? What is helping her understand how we work as a city and support her through transition. So that's kind of the main update. I don't know if you have any questions I'll just take a moment and pause if you have questions.
Dori, go ahead.
Just a quick question. What will the transition look like? Will Kurt and the new city manager overlap?
There will not be overlap in time of employment. However, I'm 99% sure they're talking already. In fact, I know that they're talking. So there's some overlap. Kurt was supposed to end his contract this month in June. And there's going to be some sort of, what does it look like? Jen's starting at the end of August. She wanted to take a little bit of time. So we're going to have a little bit of like a month-ish of transition. We've got the right people, but Jen won't be able to start until, I want to say it's August. Paolo might know the exact date, but it's August something.
Councilor, when you were talking about it being a standard budget, what do you imagine a budget looking like that would meet the needs of more citizens in Beaverton? What, in your opinion, what would that be targeting?
Yeah, so speaking just as myself, you know, I think that 2 things are missing. One is community input and one is counselor input. So a lot of us worked really hard, obviously, to get our seats. We heard things when we were campaigning that people cared about. So we ran for those things, and we've yet to be able to influence some of those things. And then the other piece would be community engagement. And I will say, what I'm excited about with Jen is I really do think she's going to take the time to get and connected and engage with our communities so that we can understand and navigate, how do we do this budget? What does the budget process look like? And so one of the things we discussed in council was September, October. That's kind of when we can set our priorities. What I'd love to see, ideal world, community input, September, October, council goal setting. Council sits down. What are the things that we care about? Here's what the community cares about. What do we care about? How we balance those things. And then, okay, City Beaverton staff, let's put together a budget that reflects these things. Another fun, just, you know, this is the teacher in me. If you want to Google, it's a concept called participatory budgeting. Participatory budgeting is this idea where the people put together where the money goes and what to happen. It's a really amazing sort of future thought concept around, you know, getting a bunch of us in a room, talking about what we want to see, what does the future of Beaverton look like? And so I'd love for us to really engage in stuff like that's like really visionary, you know, 2-5 years down the line.
Thank you. Spencer, please.
Thanks, Councilor Hasan. I did listen into the community forum where the finalists were, you know, got to make a statement and then answer questions. I was surprised that almost all the questions, I think except a couple, had to do with building out downtown, economic development, attracting business, and so on. There was little or no, well, there were a couple of questions that had to do with social service type things. That disturbed me, and I'm wondering if that is reflective of something going on in the community or something going on at council, or if you may not know.
Yeah, you know, I'm pretty sure that our social media teams put it out to the community to submit questions. And so it was probably some sort of online form where people who wanted to take the time to put their questions out, those were probably the questions, you know, those were the people that spoke out. I don't know if anyone else has insight, but that's kind of what I know of how it was done.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Oh, looks like we have a question from Kathy.
Kathy?
Thank you. I just wanted to let you know, this is reinforcing something you said, that Washington County has town meetings, and including a few months ago, priorities so that citizens could give input. And I have really wished for that with our city council.
And Kathy, I wish it too. And I think Jen will help lead us in that. I think what will be messy is what community engagement looks like to me might look different than what it looks like to the mayor, might look like what it looks like different to a council, right? So you got you're gonna have a lot more personalities. So figuring out what does the city's community engagement look like and what does the elected officials community engagement look like, so that we are still continuing to be cohesive, but very hopeful.
Any other questions for Councilor Hasan? Thank you. Lieutenant Stellingwerf, could we hear from you today too?
Hold up. Host asked 28. All right, Sergeant Kramer, I'm also giving you talking abilities there. Not sure if you could see it because I think it looks like you might be on your phone. And then Lieutenant
Can you hear me? All right. Hi, everyone.
Great.
Not sure what happened to the lieutenant.
Yeah,
but he should be here also.
Very
yeah,
good.
can you hear me? I had a little glitch all of a sudden, so I don't know if I could see me. I can hear me. Can anybody else hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
All right.
Okay, we would love to hear the updates you have to share with us.
So real quick, I don't have tons of updates. I just kind of reserved the time because there's questions about our trespass agreement. One thing I will share is Captain Smith officially retired today. He had a send off. Keith Welch will be replacing him as a patrol captain. He was promoted. Well, he'll be promoted tomorrow, and he will take over Captain Smith's duties in the operations division. Other than that, though, it looks like we're actually penciled for after the liaison updates for the trespass agreement stuff. So I can just wait for that, or I can start now. It's up to everyone.
So the bulk of my update highlight was going to be talking about the manager, and we did that already. So let's go over to Amy to close us out for liaison updates.
All right, so yeah, basically MYAB is generally winding down for our academic year because that's usually how we operate. So there isn't a lot of updates. We had our last meeting in May. Some of our subcommittees have decided to work over the summer, depending on the possibility of in-person events or focusing on turning out youth people at various events that might be happening. So that's going on right now. I'm working with the other co-chair to review applications that we received, and we'll be holding interviews and welcoming the new board members in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, there's not that many super important updates, but if anyone has any questions or comments, I'd love to hear them.
I do, Amy. What do you feel like was the biggest accomplishment you had this year? What do you feel like you were most proud of, best success?
Yeah, so honestly, I'm really proud of our board with the way that we were able to meet online and actually be productive. In years past, it's kind of been a problem with our board. Actually, we're great at setting goals, at figuring out what we envision for Beaverton, but it's harder to follow through and to overcome like administrative or certain obstacles. So a lot of our subcommittees were able to complete projects like COVID care packages and the library project. And my subcommittee was able to do a lot of the social media work that we wanted to do. So overall, I'm just happy with the way that we were able to stay productive online. And then also just with my subcommittee, we were able to have a lot more applications come in. So we were able to spread the word a little bit more and gain more feedback as well from the people that we're supposed to represent. So yeah.
Thank you. That is an impressive accomplishment. It is such a challenge to be productive online. I think that's a hurdle we're all trying to overcome still to this day. Well, great.
I have a quick question, Amy.
Yeah, please follow.
And I'm sorry if this was mentioned. My internet's a little finicky. But I know y'all had a big recruitment push this year. And how much of your board is actually going to be changing in this following academic year? And on top of that, you even have a new staff liaison as well, right? So it's a pretty significant change, I feel like MYAB is going through right now.
Yeah, definitely. So we have a 20-person limit on our board, and the amount of spots from year to year depends on how many seniors we have graduating. So right now we have like 6 open positions that we'll be filling. So we got, a lot of applications that we're sorting through for that. And yeah, that's another thing that I'm proud of our board for persevering through our change in staff liaisons. And there's a lot of work that it's hard to keep going with when you have a different person that's being your communication. So yeah, that's been a lot of changes for us, and we're really excited for next year and getting back in person. So there's a lot of excitement going around.
Your old liaison is always making sure to ask me for the references that he kept for each of you, because I know that's a really common thing coming from MYAB, is references for jobs and colleges and whatnot. So I'm supporting a little bit with that, but you have Brian with you too coming up next. So I'm pretty stoked to see what MYAB does this following year. Thank you, Amy.
Amy, were you able to get, I know last time you were here, you were talking about getting applicants from some underrepresented high schools. Did you feel like that was successful, that you were able to get a broad spectrum of candidates?
Yeah, generally, this is a very not super accurate response because I've just been combing through them. But I feel like we did get more representation from the schools that we specifically needed and wanted applicants from. Mm-hmm. Normally, there's kind of an over representation from certain private schools or circles where everyone's telling their friend to apply, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but we really wanted to reach people who maybe had never heard of it before. So I am happy with how we were able to do that, just with spreading the word through BSD and the City of Beaverton social media accounts. So yeah, I feel like that was successful.
Thank you again, Amy. Were there any other questions? Okay. Well, I'm really excited for this next section. We're going to talk about the community safety work. And Dori, can I hand it to you and let you explain to us kind of where we're at with the community art project?
Yeah, absolutely. First, some appreciations and thank yous. Sabdi, I appreciate your forgiveness for leaving you off the original email. Thank you. because I felt your forgiveness through the email, and I am humbled that I forgot. Kathy, thank you for letting us know that you were not going to be around. Hopefully the notes were helpful for everybody who participated. And Britt, thank you for your partnership and thought partnership with our two officers that we worked with. So you all have the minutes, so I won't go into those details. What I'll focus us on is our task for tonight. And Paolo, I think I sent it to you right before the meeting, that slide, if you could put it up for us. We'd like this group to help us by looking at and refining the existing 3 questions. So as we talk about data collection, we had 3 questions that we came to in our small working group. And we're looking for making the language as specific as possible so that people understand the question that they're responding to. So I would like everybody to just take a look at the questions that we have up here. In particular, I think question 3 was one that stood out to me that might need some more wordsmithing. But what we're looking for, we're trying to make it as clear to the general public as possible. And before anyone asks, I will say, we will translate these questions into other languages besides English, because that would be important to be able to engage with folks who are not English only speakers, who have a vast number of languages that they speak, and that wonderful advantage they hold. So in looking at this, any suggestions or additions or deletions or word changes that you all would make to help make these questions clearer? And any questions that you may have about the 3 questions that we've chosen.
Lieutenant Stellingwerf, did you have a comment?
No, I just, the next agenda item I thought was a trespass agreement. This was further on down the agenda.
I'm sorry. There were some last minute changes to the order because Dori had to leave a bit early. I apologize that that wasn't stated earlier. I hope that works for you if we can just adjust a little bit on the agenda.
My battery's about to die on my computer, so if you lose me, I'll just have to get on my phone. But yeah, that's fine.
Again, my sincere apologies.
That's okay.
That wasn't too kind of us not to
it's
inform you
perfectly
of
fine.
that agenda change.
Okay.
Neil, appreciate your flexibility on this one. Any comments about any of the questions, any thoughts right now? Lisa.
Yeah, thanks for putting these great questions together. I really want to try and make sure that it's super easy to read, like a elementary student could participate. So the word cultivate stands out as and collaborative, that just seems like a lot of really big words. So I actually am really attracted to the first item because it's simple and easy. And I feel like I could explain that to a small child.
So you would say drop item 2.
Or change it to make it more lower grade level, friendly, just because I think cultivate collaborative conversations is beautiful and sounds wonderful. And I love it. And might not be accessible to children, which I think would be a great target audience for a lot of artistic elements and involvement.
Thank you for bringing our young folks, our very youngest community members in, Lisa. Appreciate you. And I think
Sabby is next.
Yeah, Sabby, you had a comment?
I did. Well, a question and then a comment. So, Dori, were you saying that for the third question, you were trying to see how you could condense it so it wasn't 2 parts?
I think the question just, it feels a little bumpy to me. I started working with it a little bit. So a little bit of background in design thinking, which is a process that people use. You usually start with a how might we, better known as HMW, to start a question. But we were really thinking that third question is more of a question around how do people feel and what do they notice? So we started with how do you see the role of police officers in community safety? It feels a little bit wordy. So one suggestion was, what do you see as the role of police officers in community safety? The second question is one that was brought to us by Neil. And he said, you know, I want to know where did they learn about the roles of police officers, right? Which I appreciate that question, because oftentimes when we do diversity, equity, and inclusion work, we want to activate, we're talking about racial identity and racism and racial justice. We'll ask someone, what was your first racialized experience? And how did you come to think of race in that way? So I find those two questions to be very similar.
Okay, and are we limited to 3 questions?
The goal is to really limit it to 3 questions to allow space and time for people to complete as many as they possibly could. And we thought 3 is a magic number when it comes to completing questions.
I mean, I agree that 3 is the magic number. I just feeling like we're gonna have to end up scrapping one.
I'm sorry.
I'm wondering if we're gonna have to end up scrapping one question if you don't want 2 questions as a third bullet point. Does that make sense? Because I think the third has 2 really important questions. One, like, how do you see the present day role of police officers in community safety? But then also you want to hear about where did you learn what the role of police officers are? And I feel like those 2 questions might be more important than the second point. And maybe could we rephrase the first question to kind of give you the answers you want from the second question, to leave you at 3.
So we did double up on that last question. We gave a little leeway, but you're saying eliminate that second one altogether. Eliminate the second and then do the first one. And then what do you see the role of police officers? What do you see as the role of police officers in community safety? And where did you learn about the role of police officers in community safety?
Yes. Okay. I think the end goal is, I think we can rephrase either question 1 or question 2 to give us all the answers we're looking for.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be.
Yeah. Because that where did you learn or that experience component is really important. So we have to keep that. In my opinion, we have to keep that.
How might we help you feel safe is one that's in from, thank you, Councilor Hasan. And I believe I see Stephanie, were you next? And Britt, leap in whenever you would like. I'm going to say that because you're working on this as well. And Kathy, if you can go after Stephanie.
Thanks, Dori. I wanted to second what Lisa was saying about the accessibility of cultivate collaborative conversations. That was the first thing that stood out to me was, you know, both for access to children, but also to people that English may not be their first language, and that may end up being an inhibitive kind of a statement, not statement, words. I just think the accessibility. So I agree with Lisa on that. That was the first thing I was thinking. The third question, the part where it says, where did you learn about the role of police officers in community safety? I wonder if asking what's your experience or what have your experiences been with the role of police officers in community safety, I tend to want to go to, you know, what was my foundational experience with this, and how did I get to where I am now? But and this is just a thought off the top of my head, so please keep that in context, that, you know, it may need to go in a direction completely different than what where I'm at with this. But I wonder if the way that it's phrased isn't asking people to access a part of themselves that they may not naturally tend to want to go to, or may not be a go-to kind of thought for them. I don't think everybody tends to think, you know, where did I first cultivate this idea from, or why do I really feel that way? That may not be a first thought. Whereas if I think about what experiences have I had, that may be a bit more front of mind, and we may end up getting the more foundational answers that we're looking for with that, shifting the question to asking what the experiences are versus asking them to do more of their own deeper work of figuring out how they came to the conclusions that they did.
I think Amy had a really good idea of changing the word to how, because I think that sort of encompasses what you're saying, Stephanie.
Yeah, excellent point, Britt.
Yeah, so I would agree with Amy that we could make that change to how instead of where.
Yeah, I love that change. And also that question of, you know, if we want to go to experiences, and we'll bring this back to the subcommittee that's working on this, what are your experiences with police officers? Very simple, straightforward question, right? But I will say also, just in being thoughtful about where people are, that question can be very triggering for some people. So I just want to acknowledge that out loud.
Yeah.
And so that's a discussion that we'll have as we look at these questions in our subgroup.
I think Kathy had a question, and Jared.
Yeah. And my question keeps changing in my mind, actually. That third question, how is better? What is your experience? And I don't know exactly how to word this, but I'm seeing community safety as being ideally my responsibility too.
Right. And that's why that idea of how might we help you feel safe, we would want to change that to how would we as a community feel safe. You know, there's just some wordsmithing around that, because we also, I agree with you, Kathy, we want to also communicate when you have a question, you're communicating something in that question as well, right? So one of the things that we want to communicate, hopefully for people, is empowerment, that they have a role in community safety. Agreed. Thanks, Kathy. Thank you for that feedback. Jared, I think you were next.
Yeah, this may have been addressed a little bit, and I might have missed it, but just that first question in the third question, how do you see the role of police officers? So I wonder if, like, if we go with something similar to that, if we might just get a lot of the same response. I can imagine a lot of, like, you know, the role of police officers is to protect and serve and inform. Like, I wonder if we want to somehow word something where we might get varied responses, because I can see I just imagine a lot of the same response coming in for that one. Like, I don't know. I think I like the idea of the experience, so we can see what's actually happening versus what I think, you know, you're probably going to get a lot of almost unanimous responses for how do you see the role of police officers in community safety, but I don't quite know how to change it up to not get that.
Thank you for that feedback, Jared, and we'll consider that as we look at these questions. One thing that Britt pointed out that I thought was really beautiful in our subcommittee meeting, and Britt, I don't want to rob you of your thunder on this one because it was really important. This idea of not being perfectionists with our questions, but going out and having questions and knowing that we're going to revise them the next time or next opportunity we have to use these questions. So it's also hopefully going to give us some idea about which questions work from the standpoint of they give us a substantial amount of information, and which ones don't work. So I think that's another piece of this. Britt, did you want to follow up on that idea that you had shared during our meeting?
I think good research leads you to the next good research. And I think that that's gonna set us up really well here. I do agree with you though. I think that we could bring that third question sort of into the present tense. That way we're viewing what the community currently sees as the role rather than what generally people see as the role. So more action of like what we're currently seeing, what's happening in our community right now. I like the idea of bringing that into the present.
Thanks for these ideas. And Lisa, I think you are one to comment.
I think these are great. I am interested in the word like reimagine keeps coming up for me. Like, and I don't know if I have it all put together in my head, but like, and maybe it might be a little provocative on the other side, but like, how can we reimagine policing? How can we reimagine safety in a new way? Those are the questions that I'm really curious about. And then the other thought that I had was, should we replace the word community with city because we're the city of Beaverton? And I'm super open to either word because I love the word community, but just wanted to put that out there as a thought.
Thank you. And folks, I am picking up from the chat too, so I'll be saving that chat, so I'll have it as well. Thank you, Lisa. Councilor Hasan.
This isn't necessarily a question, just more a comment. We did have the opportunity as City Council last night to hear from TriMet, where they talked about reimagining public safety. And I don't know, I see nodding. Did you all hear or see any of that, or should I share any of what was said or happened?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, sure. So one of the interesting things that they shared, it was a presentation from TriMet. So TriMet came to us and they did this pretty in-depth study. And based on the research that they presented, a lot of people actually felt that, according to their survey, Black, people of color, and 65 plus populations felt more safe with transit police. So it's just kind of interesting. I had two questions or comments. My first question was socioeconomic status a factor in this? Because I do believe that there's an intersection between race and class when we talk about these issues. And I don't know that I got an answer. I think they said they'd send me the data. And the second question I said is, you're titling this reimagining public safety, but if the choices include lack of transit police and that, so I imagine my parents, like, what does reimagining mean to them? They might not know what reimagining means. They don't know how to say what reimagining is. And where they come from, there's a specific type of person that receives authority and respect and a specific type that doesn't. And so it was an interesting survey. I was thankful for the presentation. I'll drop the link to the presentation so you can see it, but just something for you to be thinking about. I thought it would offer some context to you as you're thinking about these questions.
Much appreciate that. And to let you all know, we wanted these to be really open-ended questions without influence, but now I think I'm seeing, Britt, what I'm hearing from people is that we may have to have like a little bit more narrative as an introduction to the questions. So we can work through that in subcommittee to let you all know where we are. When you look at the minutes, you'll kind of see where our goal is to have final questions by June 8th. When we meet with the officers and Chief Gershon, and then we'll come back to you all with the questions as they stand. Also, if anyone knows any artist of color that might want to work on a small project, this is probably, I'm thinking, a 2.5, 3-week project for creation. If you know any artists of color, please email me and I'll drop my email in the chat as well. And unfortunately, I have to run. So I am going to take off and I appreciate everybody's input. There's my email for folks to email if they have anything else. And so I will email the folks who are on the subcommittee tonight, and we will get a time scheduled for next week. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Story. I'll just step in real quick. So I know Joy isn't here yet, and I'm not actually sure if she'll be able to join us tonight. But we could come back to the other piece of the community safety work, being the lobbying at council. And I say, if y'all are cool with this, Stephanie, if you're cool with it, let's move on to the trespass agreement.
Yeah, I think we should. Lieutenant Stellingwerf has been very patient with us today. But I will say very quickly, because I want to make sure that we get this in before we run out of time, is that we really do need people to sign up and come to each council meeting. It's really imperative that we do that. And Joy's been keeping excellent track and making it really easy for us to do that and keep our presence strong. So for sure, we need to keep our presence with City Council. Lieutenant Stellingwerf, again, thank you for your patience and your flexibility today. We're very interested to hear about the trespass agreement letter. This was brought to the commission by a business owner, and it garnered some curiosity, and we're looking forward to gathering some more information about it. And we appreciate your perspective.
Okie dokie. Yeah, no problems. My computer is just getting ready to turn off, and I hadn't looked for my charger. I didn't think I'd need it. Am I being heard?
Yes.
Good?
We can hear you.
Okay. I got a little.
You're heard. You're not. You are frozen, but you are heard.
Okie dokie. Well, we'll see if that. Anyway. So we're going to talk about the trespass agreement. Some key points that I think we're asked are like, what's the origin of the agreement? Why does it exist? Well, back in the mid '90s, there kind of community policing became a thing. I mean, it's always been a thing because you can't have police without community. You can't have community without police, and that's kind of a Sir Robert Peel thing back when modern policing started over in England. So community policing. So this agreement kind of started probably the 90s, but got more detailed somewhere in the mid 2000s. We had what was called patrol resource officers and community resource officers, and we had a community policing team. And some of that generally worked with like apartment complexes and some of the livability issues that some of the apartment managers would deal with, with tenants or guests and things like that. And some of those are like making unreasonable noise, fighting, violent, tumultuous behavior, on and on. And sometimes the managers aren't always on site. Sometimes they're not even on the state. So it became a thing where we had these trespass agreements with these apartment complexes and other areas, and we'd have this agreement so you can if you're patrolling and something's amiss and somebody's violating some of these predetermined rules, we have the ability to basically exclude somebody from the property. Do you live here? No, I don't. Well, then you can't be here if you're acting like this. Keep in mind, though, a lot of times, and I'm talking about the past, I'll kind of get to the present and the future. So a lot of times that's all it took. And we do an apartment incident card, letting the management know that, here's so-and-so, this is what was going on. And that it's kind of like a street check. We call them street checks now, or FI cards. So fast forward, we start doing this with businesses. And a business can enter in this agreement, because again, it's an agreement. And there's a couple of ways we can do it. And it kind of follows the same rules where like after hours, we can talk to people, see what people are doing, kind of deter maybe theft or vandalism, things like that. But the businesses enter in this agreement. They can do this through our website. Sometimes it may be a business might be a victim of a crime, and whoever the officer is that responds might mention, well, we have this program. So we'll get referrals that way. So there's many ways that people can sign up for this. But it's I'm kind of losing my train of thought here. There's so many things about this. I'm trying to condense 30 years into 5 minutes here. So they have the agreement. So that's kind of where it is and why it exists. It's a community policing agreement. Excuse me, going back to the community policing. But it's agreement for the business, so the business owner has some peace of mind that if there's something amiss when we're not there, we can act as their agent to have somebody leave their property. Some of the question was stats. So in the last 6 months, I think there was, what did I have here? And raise your hands if I'm confusing everyone by rambling. I had a bunch of little notes I had here. Now now I've got stuff all over the place. So the last six months, there was 140 cases that involved trespass agreements. And out of 5 of those, there was some type of enforcement action or exclusion. So obviously the frequency is kind of low for that. And then I kind of mentioned, are we actively soliciting this? Well, no, it's an agreement. People can, we can tell people about the program. You know, it's up to the business on whether or not they want to enter in this agreement. And when it comes to the legal parts of things, like some of the larger businesses, corporations, or property management companies, they have you know, a legal team on staff, and the city will work with some of the language, and they have before, where to come to this amenable agreement, the attorneys will talk, and they may make adjustments to the document to meet the needs of the business and the city. So that is a flexible document. And then how many people do we know in the business are participating? I just had that number. It's just about 600, I think. Stand by.
You said how many businesses?
Yeah, there was a question, how many people participate in this?
Okay, thanks.
And I had, I just had the number here somewhere.
It's a little under 600.
Yeah, it's like 573 if I remember right. But if I'm off by 1 or 2, I apologize. But it's a lot. And some of the stuff they do, and I'll show you this. So kind of the criteria, I went over just a few of them, but there's a list of criteria that the business can post on their business with a trespass warning. And we have these, if you can see it, I don't know, maybe, okay. So this is you might be reading it backwards. No, you're reading it right. So if we're on the window, you should see it the right way. Actually, I'm reading it the right way because it's backwards. But it would go on the window, and then it's kind of just like a no soliciting, no trespass warning. Just lets people who are on the property that don't belong on the property, they're on notice that they're on somebody's property, and there's a trespass agreement. I went through a lot of information there real quick, and I'm sure Sergeant Kramer has some things to add, and I can answer some questions too. But go ahead, Lisa.
I think you quickly mentioned like there were 8 events and 6 something else. What were you saying there? I think you lost that a little.
So in the last 6 months, so just looking back, and this isn't exact with CAD calls, and it's our computer aided dispatch, there's about 140 cases that involved some type of trespass. Keep in mind, a lot of our trespass cases involve something like shoplifting or vandalism, things like that, where we have a named complainant, and there's probably an arrest associated with it. But as far as like with the trespass agreement, out of 140 of those cases, 5 involved the trespass agreement, where we dealt with some folks, and the trespass agreement was that trigger, that catalyst to deal with the trespass issue. All the other ones are different types of calls, not related to the trespass agreement, if that makes sense.
And what happened on those 5 calls? Didn't you say something?
I don't have the detail. It sounds like maybe there were unwanted people on a property overnight, led to report, signed trespass agreement, extra patrols. So I can't tell you. I'd just be assuming what happened to the individual in these cases. I'd have to pull each case
I thought you
individually.
said that. Sorry. Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, I just thought you said like of the 5 something.
Well, of the five persons were dealt with as a result of the trespass agreement. Now, what was their ultimate, I guess, resolution, whether it was arrest or an exclusion or whatever? I don't know that. I'm just saying there's 5 people. The nexus of our contact with them was with the trespass agreement.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying.
No problem. Sean, did you? Oh, we've got a whole bunch of questions now, and then I'll let Sean jump in wherever he wants. Spencer, I'm just going from left to right here. I don't know who's in order. I'm just looking at how you look on the screen right now. So Spencer.
here. So we have.
I'm next.
Okay, if you want to be next, that's fine.
So I guess my question is that reading through the agreement, I thought, would the police not come if there was a problem if you hadn't signed the agreement?
No, not at all. But okay, so something I didn't mention. We also, when somebody enters in this agreement, we have the most current RP information, the responsible person. So let's say, heaven forbid, somebody goes out in downtown Beaverton and smashes a bunch of windows. Well, we look at that address, and the officers have access to these agreements or addresses. So we have, it's easier to get a hold of the RP. So we know who the responsible person is. We can say, hey, look, something happened in your business. They can decide to come out, not come out, send out a company to put up a board, whatever. They can decide whether or not they want to press charges, not press charges. So that helps us speed things up as far as finding responsible persons. It's also a deterrent too. So if you know there's a trespass agreement, for example, we'll just take a car lot, for instance, 3 o'clock in the morning, if somebody's skulking around in the parking lot, looking through windows, we can probably ask if that car lot has a trespass agreement. We could talk to these folks and say, well, do you work here? Well, no, I don't. Well, what are you doing here? Maybe we call the RP and say, hey, there's a couple fellows in your parking lot right here. Do they work for you? No, they don't. Or maybe we say, well, if they don't have a good reason to be here, we can say, well, you guys can't be here, and they just get excluded. Not very rarely do these end up in an enforcement action. It's just it's a mechanism to help the business. It's kind of an extension of a business. If they were there at 3 o'clock in the morning, they could tell these folks to move along. You can't be on my property, right? Does that make sense?
So primarily it's being used to have a contact person and to kind of gather some preliminary information about who should be on the property.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, it does allow us to enforce as well if we need to, but primarily it's an exclusion type tool. Does that make sense? So if like somebody's sleeping on somebody's property, or so some of these livability complaints you'll get from businesses, we're able to deal with that at 3 o'clock in the morning, and we can either sometimes we would call the business. It just depends on what it does. There's no incident's going to be the same. I mean, everyone has its own set of circumstances and fact pattern, but it's just a partnership for the business to be able to, like an insurance policy, I guess.
It seemed like there was a liability release aspect of the agreement too, so that the business would lose the option of follow through if something went wrong, or if things. It seemed like there was the business was also relinquishing some of their rights. Is that?
These are all good city attorney questions.
Okay.
So
that was I felt confusion, I guess, about one. Well, isn't this something that the police are already doing? And then two, that it seemed like there was a release aspect to it that created some confusion in my mind about why that would be beneficial. But okay, so that aspect of it, you feel like we should follow up with the city attorney?
Yeah, I would.
Okay, thank you so much.
Can I just reiterate here that the vast majority of these do go through a business owner's legal department or liaison, and there's some back and forth between Grace and whoever their attorney is. And this thing's been in place for a long time, and all the legal minds on both sides of the house have always come to an agreement that this is a good thing for their business. It doesn't relinquish their control of the business to us in any way, shape, or form. It just allows us to, it provides them with a little bit of peace of mind, and primarily those after hours scenarios where the property manager or the stakeholder in that business isn't there to control their property, isn't there to manage their property. So.
Well, he said it way better than I did. Thank you, Sean.
Spencer's
Spencer, then
next.
Kathy,
Kathy.
and Sam.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
Spencer
sorry, Spencer.
is next.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry, Spencer.
that's okay.
Could you state in just really simply what the police cannot do in the absence of one of these agreements? And as a resident of the city, and I call or someone reports an intruder, I don't have one of these agreements. Does that mean you can't come into my house? Or in any case, what can't you do if a business doesn't sign this agreement?
Well, that's a good question. Let me ponder that for a minute. And what was the second part of your question?
Well, this is for businesses.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference between a business and a
Right.
private residence?
Right.
When it comes to coming on someone's property in response to a problem.
Well, I think not to oversimplify it, the part about what can't we do, well, I'm not going to go on somebody's property and tell them who can be there and who can't be there. So imagine this, the first part of your thing is you talked about if you call and say, I think there's an intruder in my neighbor's house. Well, that's different than me driving by, like I'll just use the car lot example again. And hey, what do those guys do in the car lot? Well, we might still talk to them, but we don't have really any authority to tell them to move along, because they could give us a story. Hey, I'm the nephew of the owner and I'm looking at cars. Well, all right. And maybe an officer might do some more investigating and try to find out the RP like we talked about. Maybe they don't have the agreement, so there's going to be more digging and things like that. And we'll get to the bottom of it eventually. But if you have the agreement, a simple solution would be, well, you can't be on the property. Does that kind of make sense, Spencer?
Well, yeah, except if it's not a nephew.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe they're really clever and know how to pick lots or something. But...
Right. Well, absent any probable cause or any other reasonable suspicion, there's not a whole lot we can do. Okay.
So back to the business. If I own a business and I do not sign this agreement, what services from the police will I not get?
We wouldn't exclude somebody at 3 o'clock in the morning on your property.
I'm sorry?
We in that scenario I use, like with the car lot, we wouldn't tell somebody to leave the property.
Oh. So okay.
Well, I don't, are they supposed to be there or aren't they supposed to be there? Right. And like I said, we can try to figure all that out if there's some reasonable suspicion or probable cause for other crimes and things like that. But, you just can't go on people's, I can't go to your house and tell people to leave either. You can ask me to have somebody leave your house. Like I have somebody here, it was a guest, he's unwanted, I'd like that person to leave. We're not going to arbitrarily go do that on somebody's private residence, but if Spencer called me up and said, hey, this person's really causing a problem, I want him to go, then we can say, hey, this is Spencer's place, you have to leave. If you don't leave, yeah, there could be a trespass thing, but really we're asking you to leave and it's a warning, okay? The only thing different there is you're there at your house telling us, I want this person to leave. We don't necessarily, with the trespass agreement, have to have you present right in that moment. We can do it on the business owner or the manager's behalf. Does that make sense?
So, I'm sorry, oversimplifying it. If I own a business and I don't sign this agreement, you can't enforce the law?
No, we're talking about trespassing. Of course, if somebody goes into your business and smashes up your windows or sets fire to something, or there's a burglary, of course, we're going to respond, investigate, and hopefully find out the perpetrators. So no, it's not that we can't investigate. This is just a deterrent community policing piece where a business owner has given us the authority, like most of the time, like Sean spoke of, after hours, we can have people move along from some of these businesses in order to avoid further problems or maybe deter a crime or prevent a crime. You just don't know what you don't know.
Okay, thank you. I'll stop now.
Okay.
Go ahead, Kathy.
Kathy.
Thank you. This came to my attention. A friend who was on the Human Rights Commission in Portland sent it to me, said, do you know anything about this? My daughter is an attorney. She thinks there are a lot of illegal things in here.
Okay.
Okay, and so Joy and I talked about it extensively before the meeting, and I'm just going to bring up some of our concerns about it. Okay, and then luckily after me is Cameron, who's a lawyer, and he can be the sweep on
Well,
this.
I'll tell you, Kathy, luckily I'm not a lawyer. So if we're going to debate the merits of the legal issues that Joy sent me, I've already looked at those. And kind of what I mentioned earlier, if these are legal questions, I would just refer to the city attorney's office.
I would like to hear your questions, Kathy, if possible.
Thank you, Lisa. And I guess one question was, did the city attorney okay this? Is actually one question. So, being human rights, I am especially concerned that that trespass without doing harm, if I'm clear on what you're saying, what you have rights to do, you have a right to arrest somebody or tell somebody to move on if they seem to be doing harm to a property. But if they're just there, that this contract takes care of it. That's what I'm interpreting what you said. And I am especially concerned about homeless people, people with disabilities, people with mental illness. I am very concerned about them, and I'm concerned about the 1 year exclusion. It makes the police judge and jury. Police are both the law officers who capture the person, but judge and jury. If you break this, it's 1 year exclusion. Seems to me that a legislature needs to, no, doesn't need to do that. Okay, Cameron's shaking his head. And I was wondering about my criteria for exclusion, because that to me seems a bit loosey-goosey, okay? And I wondered if this was to serve the business owner better or to help the police, serve the police better, what the reason for this is. And the business owner request an officer to take this action? Would you call the business owner and say, shall I do this? Or no? Cameron says no. And I had one more question here, and of course, I wanted to let people know that this contract was sent to my friend by a business owner who was upset with it and who said that a police officer came into his business with it to solicit it. And so it made me wonder, did business owners say the people who belong to, oh boy, the Commerce Group? Did they request this, or did this come from police? My friend's daughter, who is the attorney, said that this contract and something similar to it is being used by police departments all over the US right now. And did it come from a need in our city, a need for that the businesses saw, or did it come for protection, a need that police saw? I think those are my main questions.
I guess I'll answer your last question. The answer to your last question is really little column A and little column B. It does make, it provides peace of mind to the business owner that they know that we can act on their behalf when they're not there for their business. Like Lieutenant Stellingwerf, mentioned earlier, the overwhelming majority of these that we will utilize in assisting us in our job are in those dark 30 hours of the morning where the property owners aren't there to manage their properties themselves. So it is far more often than not that the business owners are soliciting us. Now, I heard what you said about how this was sent to you, and that occurred a couple of weeks ago while we were doing a canvassing effort in notification of the local area around the city library of what we believed to be a fairly large protest that was coming to town. So we were just notifying folks that there was that the city of Beaverton certainly believes in the right to speak freely and to assemble freely, but we also would like to keep those spaces free of criminal activity. And during the course of those conversations, we would educate the business owners on the trespass agreement program that we had. Getting back to, I think, a little bit of Spencer's question earlier, more often than not, it's really just providing peace of mind to the business owner that we can act on their behalf when they're not there in order to manage their property for them, move people along off of their property that have no reason to be there.
Thank you, Sergeant. Cameron, was it Cameron or Sabinas? Cameron, I think.
So most of my questions have been answered, and the remainder generally will fall into the categories of either should be referred to the city attorney, or answering them will result in angry phone calls from DAs and the city attorney. But I will reiterate a substantial amount of concern with the wording of this, especially in light of the sergeant's statement that it was pressed in the lead up to a political event. This leaves open an enormous number of holes for civil suits. We're looking at 1983 actions under Monell claims. You're looking at private tort actions for injuries. There are an enormous number of holes in this, both for business owners and for the police department, and therefore the city. I would strongly urge that the city attorney really take this from scratch and consult with and perhaps consult with attorneys who are more specialized in this area instead of the generalized city attorney.
Thank you, Cameron. Safi?
Might be rich about a legal degree, but as I was reading through this, the first thing that came to mind was this tied to any kind of upcoming protest or the year of protests that we've had since last May. And to hear it said out loud is a little concerning. And, you know, of course, I don't own a business in the city of Beaverton, but I understand the desire to protect property and protect businesses, but I also understand the desire to protect free speech and the right to do that. So agree that even as a layperson reading this, the language is really concerning. I'm also curious as to, you know, what's in place of this now. My thought is, if we're talking about zero dark 30 and making the decision to exclude a trespasser at 3 a.m. when a business owner isn't on property, then I assume the only other option would be like private security if a business owner, you know, paid for that. And then that kind of leads me to, well, what are we doing playing this? What are we doing treating the Beaverton Police Department as private security, and who does that benefit at the end of the day? So that I think also needs to be addressed. Also, I'm curious to know, like, how is this being tracked? So as you know, you are either out if there's a protest, watching these protests happen, or if you're on patrol, like, how do you know what businesses have an agreement on file or not? And then I guess I already answered this, the person isn't called, the business owner isn't called, you're just realizing that there's a trespasser, you realize that there is an agreement in place with the business owner, and you're just making the decision to handle that trespasser. And then at what point is the owner notified that something happened? And what control do they have over that? You know, because, for example, a homeless person could be a trespasser on the personal property, but one business owner may not care. You know, as long as they're not harming the property, that the homeless person is there, and we're leaving that decision up to the police officer. I don't know. It just feels like a lot of gray area. So
Right.
I'm not saying
Well,
that the impulse behind it was negative.
Yeah.
I want to protect businesses, but I agree with Cameron, agree with Kathy or Catherine. This needs to be discussed.
Lisa?
I would like to make a motion to one, raise this to an appropriate person at the city, and two, to invite the city attorney to come talk to us. Would anyone second that motion?
Looks like we have a second from Britt.
I question the need for the motion in the first place. We can, do we need it in the minutes that we want to ask the city attorney to come and talk to us?
I certainly think we need to address some of the legal concerns. Lieutenant Stellingwerf and Sergeant Kramer, do you, I mean, this is more of a, I guess, a personal / professional question, but do you feel that you're being turned into kind of a private security for businesses? Has that, or has it, I'm actually asking more of a feeling question, if you will. Has it felt like it's partnering with businesses for you, or has it felt more like you're being used by the city to kind of provide private security for business?
Well, yeah, you know, I don't know, because I'm not out there on the day-to-day, Stephanie, but kind of like what I mentioned earlier, just in the last 6 months, we can kind of narrow down where there's 5 incidences where they even had anything to do with the trespass. So even the frequency of these being used is really pretty low, okay? And as far as the partnership with the businesses, I think we all have an interest to have a safe community. And these are all just preventative measures to prevent crime. So I don't think, it's not because we can prevent it, or we can report it, or we can do both. So sometimes just having that presence and having somebody move along might avert some other kind of crime. Again, that's, you don't know what you don't know, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's a terrible thing. We're certainly not posted at people's businesses, and as like a nighttime security, I think was kind of mentioned. That's not the case, but as officers patrol the streets of Beaverton, they might notice something. So it's something that might pique their interest, and there's a measure in place. Sometimes that may or may not be able to deal with that. But like I said, the frequency is pretty low anyway, but all good questions.
Thank you.
I think my interest is trying to figure out who would potentially make changes to this document, and seeing if that person sounds like the attorney could come talk to us about like why it's written that way and how they think that supports community safety, and then like trying to think about it in terms of like maximizing free speech, right to protest, and overall community safety, not just the safety of businesses, which are already they already have more safety than a lot of other folks in our community. And I think as health equity minded commission, I think it's our duty and our hope that we can reframe that or reimagine it in a way that may promote community safety for all residents, not just the business owners who sign this form. So Paolo, do you think that asking the attorney to come would be the best next step, or who on the city council or management, and maybe Councilwoman Hasan has a good idea, could we get to consider this further?
I'm going to jump it over to Councilor Hasan.
Yes, Councilor Hasan, please.
Thank you for bringing this up. I don't know that I was prepared for how deep this would go, but I'm so glad that we're doing it. I do think that this might fall in an area of policy, around policy specifically. And if it falls in policy, then it does live in City Council's house. City Council has not engaged in that house right now, right? So there have been comments about the City Council wanting to engage in police policy. Has not happened. I don't know. It is slightly as a lack of having a city manager or a president, a specific person. So, I saw Cameron's message about the city attorney. I'm inclined to agree. I'd love for Bill to come talk to you. I don't know that he would, but I would encourage you to consider sending City Council an email about this, just so we know. We don't know what we don't know. I knew about there was, I don't know if this is the same protest, but there was a protest. Quite a couple different things went down because of that, and there were a lot of us that were involved in trying to understand what had happened, what was going on, and so. I think ultimately this is going to be a policy conversation that City Council needs to have. I don't know if and when we're, going to actually start to have it, or when we'll get closer to having it. I think that you should do everything that you feel is appropriate, but I would also ask that if one or any of you wanted to share your concerns in an email to us as City Council. I haven't messaged anyone, but I don't think any of us know about this at all. And if we don't know about it, then I don't know that we even know how to address it.
Thank you, Councilor Hasan. Our intention with this today was to keep it very inquiry based, to try to understand what we don't know, and what our initial blush in reading it. Where, with the exception of Cameron, we are not attorneys. And so it's, I think it's been very important for us to be inquiry based. And the beauty of inquiry is that we can bring things to the table, to council, to the city attorney. And if refinement is needed, then fantastic. Then we can better our community through that, and continue to have a strong community-based police department. I mean, we're all in support of that, but we need to understand what's happening. And there were aspects of the agreement that were, again, at first blush, they kind of came across as concerning. So while we're in an inquiry phase right now, I think that that has opened the door to a few more questions, and I want to specifically thank Lieutenant Stellingwerf and Sergeant Kramer for your candor today and your willingness to answer these questions, because and to refer us on too. I mean, I think that's an important aspect of it, is to say, you know, that's not in our wheelhouse. That's not the part of it that we handle. But it's been very helpful to understand this perspective, and I think it has led us to consider some next steps. So thank you so much. Did anyone else have any comments that needed?
Stephanie,
Yes, please, Spencer.
we have a motion on the table to ask the city attorney to come and address this matter with us.
I would second that.
I think Britt seconded.
Oh, are we all in favor?
If we call the question, yeah, it just was unclear if we wanted to go forward. I'm all in.
So again, I think we're very much in the inquiry phase, and we have some really potent questions that need to be addressed, and we have some excellent partners that have begun to help us through that process. Councilor Hasan, Lieutenant Stellingwerf, and Sergeant Kramer, and the expertise of Cameron is all very, very helpful.
I have a question for Paolo.
Yes, Paolo.
Pass the motion to ask the city attorney. Do city officials appointed or elected, do they have the option of coming and talking to a commission like this if we ask them to come and talk?
You know, I've never actually come across that scenario before, so my assumption is yes. And what I could commit to from here is that I am going to ask somebody, just raise that, hey, HRAC has raised this concern and wants some clarification from our city attorney's office. And I don't know necessarily that bill will come out, but I know Grace Wong does a lot of the work on behalf of boards and commissions with the city. And so my best guess right now is that maybe we could get Grace Wong in here to talk about this on behalf of the office. A few other things I just wanted to comment on, and I wanted to be respectful, not to speak for Joy, but also just share some of the concerns that Joy shared with me. And some of it was brought up here as well, but just to clarify, and I think Lieutenant clarified this also, that this was actually vetted by our city attorney. I was notified of that. Abigail, the intern? No, that's Kurt. Sorry, I get confused with people's things now. But Abigail let me know that okay, this has been in existence for quite a while and was vetted by the city attorney. But I certainly can ask somebody from there to come and clarify and talk about it some more.
And Councilor Hasan's comment about us sending an email to council this may fall under their umbrella, and that may be something that we need to talk about in our planning meeting. But I'm going to guess that there's consensus that we should follow up on this, and again, we need to stay inquiry based, and as we gain information, then move to action based.
Thank you, Kathy, for bringing this to our table today, and yeah, I appreciate everyone for their comments and feedback.
And the only thing I would remind everyone, just remember this too, it's an agreement. I think in this case, somebody didn't like the tone of the agreement and they didn't agree to it. So that happens too. Not every single business does this, but this is something that the city offers for businesses that have concerns. So just keep that in mind for the business folks, okay?
Oh, for sure. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Okay, on to some happy stuff to talk about. This is Joy's section. Unfortunately, due to some external circumstances, she can't be with us right now. But we were moving on to talking about brainstorming about our Pride event.
Yeah.
Paolo, can you
I
speak
can
to
share
that?
a little bit. Oh, thank you, Lieutenant. I can share a little bit here. And I'll be honest with you, there's actually still not a lot of updated information based on from what I told you last time, which is basically that the Pride event is most likely going to happen this year, June 27th. And last I heard, they were still working on their permitting process. It's actually an entity that's not the city, but a partner of the city. And I forget who the organization is. I don't know that that was ever brought forth actually to me, but basically it's going to be June 27th. I don't actually have a time yet, but I think one thing that could be helpful for Joy, who's helping kind of organize and coordinate this piece, is first off, who can be there tentatively June 27th? And I'm sorry, I don't have an actual time for you. So, okay, there's Kathy, Stephanie, and Sabdi. Okay. And whoa. Okay, everybody. So Spencer, Britt.
I saw everybody but Lisa and Cameron.
Okay, got it. Sweet. Joy's gonna love this.
Oh, we want to celebrate. We want to do something that
Yeah.
adds a whole nother level of positivity to the community, and this is certainly a beautiful way to do that. We do a lot of hard work in HRAC, a lot of hard questions, and that's so deeply necessary. But it's hard work. It's often conflict oriented, as our last conversation felt a bit conflict oriented, but those are necessary conversations, and I'm really proud of the way that we handled it with respect, and I'm grateful to the officers for their respectful responses also. But I mean, thank goodness we get to do Pride celebration too and find out about that. I mean, hello, that would be exciting to get to do something with that.
Yeah. So I think in addition to attendance, is if you have any ideas of promotional materials or anything you'd like on said table that I think you have, I know not a lot of great concrete details, right? Those would be a good time also to collect, or good things to share here. If you have things
we have materials that we can generate conversations about our commission with.
Sure. So you do have a pamphlet that's a bit outdated, I must admit. So you have those pamphlets in the past. Some HRAC members have also facilitated like they like doing like a survey question type thing where people could interact with folks, and there's like a spinny wheel, and then people get prizes and then learn more about the board and commission. But then they would also have human rights related questions related to the topic of that event. So in this case being Pride. So that's an example of what we've done in the past and some of what you could do also in June 27th.
And I think the sponsoring organization is called Beaverton Pride.
That makes it easy.
Brett?
Yeah, I was just curious. I know that you just mentioned possibly a question, but I was wondering if maybe one of the more general questions that we have from the art project that we're working on, that might be a good place for us to test it and sort of get initial feedback. That way we can, inform our bigger project later as well.
Brilliant. Jared?
Yeah, just confirming. I was looking online earlier. Is it correct that there's not a parade this year? It would just be kind of a table or whatever we decide to do? Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm afraid it's something better than nothing, but gotta miss the parade. COVID. Get your damn vaccinations, people.
I'm going to follow up with the events manager because she's the main contact. All I wanted to make sure is like, hey, HRAC wants a table, can they get one? So we have a table. All the other details, I don't know. But I've made a note to follow up again.
Thank you, Paula. We'll take any opportunity to celebrate. Kathy?
I'm wondering if the city also has a table, or if we represent the city, if HRAC does, So we put up the city's proclamations, statements about pride. And if we have a collection of the legislative innovative things that protect our LGBTQ folks, and that perhaps that might be something we could consider sharing. I have regular human rights, the little blue pamphlets, but nothing related just to gender.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. And if that's what y'all would like to do, I would need some support in crafting set, not crafting, but collecting what those protections are. Lisa?
So the city doesn't have a table, Paolo? It's just HRAC.
What I was told is that they would give us 2 tables, and HRAC has one. I haven't confirmed if somebody else from the city is going to be using that other said table, but I wrote it down as an additional follow-up.
Okay. I was thinking like if you guys like to follow up on Britt's idea of using one of the questions, like just a really cheap, easy option is to get a bunch of broken crayons from people's houses, which I assume people have, or whatever kind of artistic implements, and lay a huge white piece of paper out on a table and let folks one by one, COVID safe, draw what the answer is to the question. And then we could take a picture and put it on the Beaverton website, or use it as like an idea map for the art project that we're gonna do. And it would be cool and interactive and fun for people. I don't know how that would relate to Pride, but I think it would be really cool. Or we could also ask a question related to Pride and have coloring out and do it a little different. So that was kind of what I was thinking as a cheap, easy, fun, interactive thing.
Okay, cool. So what I'm gonna have to do, because this event happens before our next meeting, so there will be some follow-up also, and I did take note of the names of folks who raised their hands who said they want to participate. So expect some outreach from myself and or Joy for next steps there, but totally, yeah, leave that spot on your, or save the date on your calendars, and at some point there will be a time that you can add to it also. And then I just want to share too that Spencer had the idea of possibly can we use some HRAC funds to get these cool shirts. They're like Pride, or they're rainbow colored shirts that I think were tie-dye, and then they have HRAC's logo on it. So something else we could also totally look into. And I will do that.
I'm all for the t-shirts, Paolo. Now I'm just getting giddy. Come on now. We've got a coloring project and we got t-shirts. It's been too long since we had something fun.
Now, I know the next piece on here, we have Councilor Hasan to share a little bit about some Advocacy 101 and some opportunities. I'm so sorry that I don't know if you have enough time, but 7 minutes, Councilor Hasan, please take it away.
I can still do something. I don't have to. It's.
Oh, we'd really like you to.
Oh, okay.
You have 7 minutes. I know that Spencer, I know that crunches a little bit on your resources. Are you comfortable kind of having Councilor Hasan share that, and then perhaps we can put some of the resources in the chat? Or how would you like to handle that, Spencer? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, I'd love to hear from Councilor Hasan. She's much more interesting than I, for sure.
Bless your heart, thank you. I will try to be a little fast. So if there's something that you're like wanting to dig deeper in, like I'm happy to talk with you separately. You can always just send me an email. I'm pretty good about that. So I'm gonna share this Google Chrome. Do you see a picture of circles?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is just like a high level. I'm very teachery, so if I get too teachery, just like tell me to slow down. there's sort of different bubbles of work in terms of elected office. And so the biggest circle that I acknowledge in the state of Oregon is the Oregon State Legislature. They set our public policy, administer the state budget, amongst other things. The second layer that I see that's really involved is Metro. Right below that is right here, which is Washington County. And so the county really directs, let me make this is better. The county directs some of our county work. So if you want to do advocacy with our county commissioners, we have county commissioners. And then we've got the city of Beaverton. So that's kind of like the big picture that I like to show. I did not mention the United States, right? We also have the federal legislature. I've talked enough about the charter, so I won't talk a ton about this, but the way that I see the city is that we've got other boards and commissions. So we've got the school board. Fun fact, we elected a pretty new school board this last election. So you're going to see some really great, some new faces. So anything related to schools and advocacy around education, you really take to your school board. Metro is this regional government that we partner with. Any advocacy or things that you want to do, they do a lot with our parks, forests, some very specific things. Washington County, that's our county. There's a lot of there's like water board, fire board. THPRD manages our parks. So these are just areas that like when you're wanting to do advocacy or when you care about something, just from a government perspective, helping you understand like where you can go. And then the other piece that I was gonna do a little bit about was just understanding bills and laws. I'm going to be vulnerable with you. I'm learning a lot of this myself. So I don't know a ton, but one of the things that has been super powerful for me is to understand what bills are out there. There are a lot of bills right now that are around police reform, interestingly enough, that based on the outcome of those bills, it really starts to change the conversation, because if the state of Oregon adopts one of these bills or laws, then that has to trickle down to the city, or it will in theory trickle down to the city. So and I'll just wrap it up because this is a very quick version. But one thing that I do, so Representative Bynum has been super big in sponsoring a ton of really a lot of specifically police reform. And so you can look up things that she's sponsored in one way. But what the thing that I think is the coolest that I've learned so far is to look up testimony specifically, because it helps me understand where things are going in laws. And there were over 2,200 bills written, I believe, in this session. So there is a lot of like stuff happening. Do any of you know any bills off the top of your head that I can look up that you're interested in? If not, I can just Google one.
There's, I believe, let's see, this is just actually one that I kind of am working on a little bit in my job. I think it's Senate Bill 52, which will create, or it will, let's see. Yeah, directs the Department of Education to implement a statewide education plan for students who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, two-spirit. Yeah, so basically there are a bunch of plans right now. In effect, I think there's the Black and African American Student Success Plan. There's a bunch of student success plans that are targeted toward different student groups, and this would be, I think, the first LGBT plus student success plan.
Yay. And so what I think is so cool, or what I have thought is so cool, is I love looking at the testimony. I like to know who supports, who doesn't support. It really gives me insight on people, organizations, what's going on out there. So I'm not going to click on any specific one, but there are a ton of bills out there. Some of them have survived. Some of them are still, standing on legs. I think the session wraps up this month, so it's going to be wrapped up pretty soon. But as I've been learning a ton about advocacy and lobbying and stuff, like, you have the ability as a resident of the city of Beaverton to testify. And there's ways to submit testimony. The session's almost over, so there's probably not any specific opportunities today or in the next couple of weeks, but getting to know this website and just learning about lobbying and advocacy, I think can be really helpful in a lot of the things that I know that you all care about. So I'll stop. It's 8:30 and I know that I want to make sure that we make space for others.
Can you drop that website into the chat so we can play with that a little bit offline? And that's an exceptional resource. Thank you for exposing us to that. And can I just say wow about Jared? I mean, hello. What an extraordinary group of people
He's
that
writing bills.
we are, and that we get to work with, bringing forward Senate bills. Kudos to you, Jared.
You anticipated what I was going to get into anyway. Last month, I sent out an email to everyone listing all of the bills in the legislature having to do with police reform. As we all probably know by now, cities reforming their own police departments are often constrained by state statutes. And there are a number of bills that are before the legislature right now that address that and allow us as a city to clean up some of the issues that probably we've all been talking about anyway.
And I'll also just add on that website, you can also watch all of the video testimony. So you can read the written testimony, but for every session that's been held, every work session or every public forum, you can go on there and it's all recorded. And it's not in person this year. Usually you can actually just log in and see them in the in the room. Now it's all online, but you can watch all that testimony. It's all recorded and it's all public.
You gonna find you in there, Jared?
No, you will not. Not testifying, just working behind the scenes.
Making the real impact. Well, thank you all. I'm going to make a motion to adjourn. I thank you all. This was an intense meeting that we've had today, and I think we did some exceptional work. And I'm always just wildly honored to work with such a fantastic commission of people that are so thoughtful and pose such incredible questions, but also have such beautiful, diverse backgrounds that allow us to do the kind of work that we do. So thank you all for tonight. Just I feel really heartfelt about that. So motion to adjourn. Awesome. Lisa says yes. Bye y'all. Good night.
Bye.
So what'd you think? Did it go the way you wanted, Kathy? We're getting cut out. Paolo's taking us down. Thank you, Spencer.
Thank you, Stephanie. Nice to see you.
Yeah, really great. I'm sorry your part got cut a little bit at the end.
I'll send out an email. What I've got is a human rights, and all I have is a human rights and anti-segregation seminar being put on by an institute at Berkeley.
Wow.
And it's free. Everything's free.
Well, I mean, that's why I'm lamenting that we didn't get to that, because I feel like you have these rich resources that if we can access, we just stay so much more involved. How did you think the police part of it went?
Probably.
Actually, we're recording.
You mean about the letter?